On March 8, 2014, a plane took off from Kuala Lumpur, heading for Beijing. It was a totally routine flight, the kind that happens thousands of times a day. But for the 239 people on board, and for all the families waiting for them, this flight, well, it was the start of an agonizing decade of silence and a mystery that, honestly, the world still can't quite get its head around.
Good night, Malaysian 370. Those were the last words anyone ever heard from the cockpit. It was a completely normal sign-off from Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, just as he was guiding the plane out of Malaysian airspace. There was absolutely nothing in his voice to suggest that anything was wrong. And then, silence. In the 2 minutes after that call, and for the 7 long hours that followed, something happened that would become one of the biggest mysteries in modern aviation. It kicked off a search that pushed our technology to its absolute limits and left hundreds of families trapped in a horrible state of not knowing.
Okay, let's really get into this. We're talking about a Boeing 777. In the aviation world, this plane is a workhorse. Seriously, it's one of the safest and most reliable jets ever built. This was supposed to be a simple 6-hour overnight trip. Nobody, and I mean nobody, had any reason to think something could go wrong.
Just think about who was on that flight. There were artists, engineers, families heading out on vacation, even toddlers. It was a cross-section of humanity, really. And every single person had a life story that was about to be just cut short. And for every name on that passenger list, there's a world of loved ones who are left behind, just waiting for answers.
Now this is where it gets really crucial. From an aviation expert's point of view, the timing here is everything. This wasn't just some random event. It happened in a very specific, very critical window of time. A moment where a plane could, effectively, become invisible.
So at 1:21 a.m., right as the plane was crossing from Malaysian airspace into Vietnamese airspace, which is kind of a virtual no man's land for air traffic controllers, its transponder was switched off. For 17 gut-wrenching minutes, as these two countries were handing off responsibility, nobody was actually looking for MH370.
And this right here, this shows the first massive shock of the investigation. The plane didn't just fall out of the sky. It made a sharp, deliberate turn, completely away from its destination. Military radar data, which, and this is incredible, wasn't shared for 5 critical days, showed it just kept flying for another 7 hours. It was a ghost plane, flying in total silence.
So how in the world do you find a plane that seemed like it didn't want to be found? For the families who were desperate for answers, the only glimmer of hope came from these faint, hourly little handshakes the plane made with a satellite thousands of miles away. You have to understand, these pings were never designed for tracking a plane. But in what was an incredible piece of detective work, investigators used them to narrow down a search area. This tiny sliver of data ended up redirecting the largest search in aviation history to one of the most remote and hostile places on the entire planet. That first search cost over $200 million. It scoured 120,000 square kilometers of this treacherous ocean floor. And for years, crews searched, families held vigils, they waited by the phone, and they found absolutely nothing. Then, over the next few years, more than 30 pieces of debris started washing up along the African coast, which finally confirmed the plane had crashed. For the families, imagine that. It was a devastating confirmation of their loss, but it still didn't answer the 2 biggest questions: where and why. So without the main wreckage, without the black boxes, you get this vacuum. And that vacuum was just filled with all sorts of theories. But as the investigators started piecing together the flight's final hours, the little data they had began to point towards one pretty chilling conclusion. Let's just walk through this. A sudden mechanical failure, or maybe a fire from those lithium-ion batteries, that just doesn't explain the deliberate turn and the long, controlled flight. A hypoxia event where everyone passed out from lack of oxygen? Well, that doesn't explain how the plane made that first manually flown turn off its flight path. So here's the bottom line. Investigators came to the conclusion that the plane's movements were consistent with deliberate action by someone at the controls. Every single step, from the timing of the transponder shutdown to the final flight path, it all seems just coldly calculated. And for 10 long years, that's pretty much where the story stalled. A tragic mystery with a likely cause, but no proof. That is, until a new search in early 2024 by a company called Ocean Infinity reportedly led to a massive breakthrough. This new tech, these AI-driven drones, allowed them to map that hostile seabed with an accuracy we've just never seen before. And they finally located the main fuselage, the engines, and the all-important black boxes,
the things that held the secrets of the flight's final hours.
And the data they reportedly pulled from those recorders, it told a story not of an accident, but of a deliberate mass murder-suicide. I mean, can you imagine? It was a devastating, heartbreaking conclusion for the families who had clung to hope for a different answer for an entire decade.
But wait, because there's a critical twist here. The story wasn't just about the actions of one person. The data allegedly points to a much deeper, institutional failure, one that basically set the stage for this disaster to happen.
The plane's own maintenance records reportedly showed a pattern of putting schedules ahead of safety. Internal warnings were apparently ignored, and crucial repairs were postponed, also they could send a compromised plane back into the sky. It's a detail that was buried until the wreckage was finally found.
For the families hearing this, it transforms a mystery into a story of profound betrayal. You have to remember, their 10-year fight was never just about finding a plane. It has always been a fight for truth and for accountability from the very people they trusted to keep their loved ones safe.
The story of MH370 is, without a doubt, a chilling reminder of the limits of our technology. But it's so much more than that. It's a story about human loss, about an unbearable decade of not knowing, and about the relentless fight of families for answers, for truth, and finally, for justice.